So at Engineers Without Borders USA, we're committed to project performance and volunteer learning because it speaks to two central components of our mission statement. And because of that, we needed a rigorous system that could help us articulate progress towards those two objectives. Over the history of the organization, we lacked that, a systematic process that would help us capture those development outcomes and those lessons learned and help us strengthen our systems to help us deliver better in what we do. So we turned to EffectX to help us create that as a thought leader in the sector today, and we've really appreciated their assistance. At EWB USA, we're committed to project performance and volunteer learning, and we needed a system to help us do that. We think it's an integral part of providing an accountable way of delivering assistance to communities that we work with. And so we turned to EffectX to help us create that system. In this episode, we'll share with you an overview of the innovative planning, monitoring, and evaluation system that we developed at EWB USA. Kurt, given some of the challenges that we had as an organization, we turned towards you to help us create a system that would help us overcome some of those challenges through innovative approaches. Can you help us understand what some of those approaches were?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this project was quite a bit bigger than either of us realized when we got started. and so one of the things was really developing what I would consider like a central nervous system for the organization. So to me, a good monitoring and evaluation system would be like providing that coordinated central nervous system to help all of the parts really coordinate and work together. So for Engineers Without Borders, this was really important because you have four main programs: the ICP, ESC, CE Corps, and the country offices. Right. And we needed a centralized way to be able to collect information on all of those programs and be able to demonstrate how all of them are working together toward the mission of Engineers Without Borders.
That's right. There's no lack of moving parts within Engineers Without Borders USA.
No, indeed. No, indeed. And then there's there's 6 different project categories of different types of projects. All of that needed to be integrated. And then really we did an extensive literature review to look at the rigorous evidence related to the kinds of impact that these kinds of projects have been demonstrated to provide.
That's true. Many of our chapters don't have the time to spend on the ground during their field trips to collect baseline data, for example. So that was one of the challenges that we had historically, but it was that use of the literature review where we would bounce our outputs off of that data, and that would help us define our contributions toward the Sustainable Development Goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was an innovative kind of approach to this project because we knew that we couldn't collect raw new data on every project that was developed, but then when we thought about it, we realized there's a huge basis of literature, all kinds of rigorous studies related to similar projects. Engineers Without Borders isn't the only organization developing water projects or sanitation or any of the others. So we looked at the literature to develop a rigorous base of evidence from that to say if you do these kinds of projects and within these kinds of standards, the literature would say that you would have these kinds of outcomes.
That's right. And it was complex. We had a lot of difficult concepts to grapple with and to teach the different departments about. So some of the benefits of that process was a shared language that our various departments are using now. More people have learned about planning, monitoring, evaluation, and learning as a discipline, so that's helped us as an organization. And one of the benefits in the process there was what we were able to use in terms of the visuals that you and your team developed. That was a very helpful part.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And it's really been great working with engineers because engineering culture really is all about data collection and analysis and making data-informed decisions. So really the monitoring and evaluation efforts that we were doing really dovetailed nicely with engineering culture and really got some good leverage.
That's true. And back to that central nervous system. We've now got that running through all the departments of the organization. Exactly. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, so the other really important part of the design was making the connection between Engineers Without Borders efforts and the Sustainable Development Goals, and making that link. And so now with this system, all of the work that all of the different programs are doing really can be demonstrated to be contributing to the SDGs.
That's right. That's right. That was a long-term objective of ours, was to trace and map all of our activities to the relevant SDGs, and we weren't able to achieve that on our own. That was a very complex process, and we've been successful with your assistance to do that for 8 of the Sustainable Development Goals that are relevant to the works we do, and we're currently tracking the 9th one, which is Sustainable Development Goal 13, Climate Action, which is a bit more complex, so it's taken more time.
Another important piece of the system is it's collecting evidence related to the contributions toward education and developing global leaders.
Yeah, that's a very important element. And that's something that we didn't have in the past. Certainly we had our stories and anecdotes and some examples that we could talk about. But today, that very critical half of our mission statement has a rigorous system in place now that helps us articulate that systematically to those that support our organization, and it helps our volunteers themselves to track their progress over time as they become better engineers.
So the system was really designed to make several different connections. So we wanted to connect EWB's activities with the Sustainable Development Goals and all of the work of the projects. And the way that we did that is we looked at the Sustainable Development Goals and looked at the specific goals and indicators within that, and then did a real rigorous look at the literature to say, what does the literature indicate related to the kinds of programs that would deliver those kinds of goals.
Almost like reverse engineering in a sense.
Exactly,
Yeah.
really reverse engineering from the literature to so that we could say that if you do a project within these kinds of standards and measure these kinds of indicators, then you really have a good basis for making these kinds of outcome claims.
And that's very important, especially when we meet with organizations that like to contribute to our efforts. We are able to look them firmly in the eye and articulate our development outcomes that are based upon evidence that can be verified and researched.
So from a design perspective, the PMEL system was really started with the mission statement, and we worked from there. So looking at the mission statement, we thought of like a pyramid where one half of it was related to the programs, the projects that were completed, the engineering side, and then the other side was really the educational and the volunteer side. And so then the system really looked at a base level of collecting data in the field on both sides and then aggregating that in several different steps so that there was a real clear connection between the field level impacts and all the way up to statements related to contribution to the SDGs as well as contribution to the mission statement.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important because beginning with the mission statement is a good way to ensure for cohesiveness and consistency, and that program side of the mission statement that speaks to empowering communities to help them address their basic needs through engineering projects. We've got that all delineated and worked out now. And likewise for equipping leaders, we've got, that's completely new, as we mentioned before, and that has also been step by step brought forth into a full system to capture those learning outcomes.
So what are some of the new opportunities that you think this system might open up for Engineers Without Borders?
Well, for sure, it's going to help us grow closer to those that support us, our donors. We will be able to describe those development outcomes that they demand to know these days. This wasn't the case in the past, 10, 20 years ago, but today it is an absolute requirement. So we have to do that. We'll grow closer in those relationships, and hopefully that will be made manifest with more donations to the programs that we're delivering in the field. Also, we've got a more rigorous system to help us capture those lessons learned that help us to improve the way we deliver assistance in the field, and to ensure that the people that we are working with, the communities we're working with, are getting the best services that they can from our chapters and volunteers in the field.
Yeah, and one of my hopes is that it would also maybe contribute to the volunteer recruitment and retention. You know, as volunteers can have rigorous evidence about the impact that they're making, that they would motivate them to stay involved.
Kurt, in the past, EWB had a design for one of its departments, but now the organization has grown and we've got 4 ways of delivering assistance. Can you share more about the system design, the components that EffectX helped EWB create today?
Yeah, I'd love to. The advantage that we had with this system design is we were really building on a solid foundation. You know, Engineers Without Borders has done evaluation from the beginning, so we had a solid start. And then the system that we designed, we really started by looking at the mission statement and the 2 sides of the mission statement, and then work from there.